Solar well application. This is a fun story. I came across this old abandoned well when we first got this place, and I dropped a rock down there and I found water. And I said, oh, it's clear all the way to the bottom. There's, I can see the bottom, I see the water. It's only 65 feet deep. So I bounced it off my 90-year-old neighbor. And this well was a well that they put in the early 1900s, and it was used by the moonshiners until the revenuers got wind of it and actually demolished. He had a farmhouse and everything here. So I said, must be a pretty decent well. Well, I got the plumb bob out and put it down there and found out that I had 8-9 feet of water in the bottom of it. So then I got the solar guy out here and we pumped it, and we found that it makes that much water, 2.5 gallons a minute, all year long, every day, as long as sun is shining on the panel. We put in one panel, but as our herd grew from 25 to 35 to 65, I found that I needed more water capacity. So instead of buying a $2,500 tracker that turns your solar panel with the sun, I said, well, I'm just going to buy one and face it east. And I'm going to get all that morning sun before the cattle even come in. And then I'm going to turn this one just a little bit to the west. And I found that I got capacity pumping for, 13 hours that way. The cattle never ran out. And I said, furthermore, I'm going to take gravity and I'm going to run it down here to the lower pond and put a float on that and just let it run over. And that's the story behind this. But it's a solar well application that seems to work for what we did. And it adapted as we went, and the water on this is fantastic. It runs out of the bottom of this through that. See, that's an old fire hose? Yeah. That old fire hose right there. Go to your local volunteer fire department and ask them when they replace their hoses, can I have a reel of your hose? And you got that wonderful, and then I just run it down there, gravity. There's a float down there, shuts the water pressure off, and it overflows here. Oh. You see what it's doing? See, it's coming right out of the bottom of that tank right there. Yeah. And I'm using water pressure to keep that full. Oh. And even when that tank's drained, there's still enough to keep water flowing down there. Okay. But the cattle never come in all at once. They come in easy, right? And it gets a chance to refresh.
Do you use this in the winter?
Nope, I turn it off. And that's the thing about solar, if you're not familiar with it. Pull the plug and leave. And that's the end of it in the winter. Like zero maintenance, running downhill. Battery. No battery. And that's all there is. So solar is a really great application. We're going to go look at another solar application that's different than this, but they're all the same basic idea, of course. But the application is different, and you'll see what I mean when we get there. Questions?
So how old are these panels?
How old are these panels? These are 10 years old now. The ones we're going to down there are 15. But they're still making above their labeled capacity 15 years later. And not just a little bit, like 20% above their labeled capacity.
How much did each one cost about 10 years?
10 years ago, they were about $700 a piece. 10 years ago, now you can get that solar panel for a lot less than that. Probably about, $400 or $500. That's kind of a big deal. Yeah. So I'm a big solar guy. Yeah. And it just helps. I mean, look at this expanse. If you didn't have this water, so when I found this and we found that it had productive water, I said, right on. Because everything on this giant pasture was watered down at that spring that I fenced out. You got to clean out your tanks so that they don't rust out. But I went to this, and this is a really good, durable plastic, this stuff. So there you go. Any other questions? Let's go look at one more solar application.
Why the two tanks?
The two tanks, because as we grew from 25 to 35 pairs out here, there just was not enough water to water them all in the heat of the summer. So I needed more time, so the east-facing one, and I needed more capacity, so the gravity flow situation. Okay, so This is the other solar application. The second solar application is, well, you can see it. And you do have to check these sometimes. And we've sprung a leak in that big blue tank. The water is filling into these reservoir bubbles here. And then it feeds gravity there and feeds gravity there. Unless you have a hole in the tank. And I'll have to figure this out. Actually, what I'll do is I'll come up later and let these cattle out into here as an alternative while I get that fixed. So those blue plastic tanks don't work so well. They fail. What I can say about this is this really waters a lot more than just what you see here. I've got, and I'll show them to you. We'll go to them. There's over 1.5 miles of pipe. I was standing up here one day and I got to looking at this place going, how can I get more water on that giant field without having to build a fence? And I see this wash, this drainage going downhill. I said, well, it's downhill. So I started running inch and a quarter pipe down. And I've got other water stations on down that draw that water this pasture more than just right here and just that other little solar well. So we're spreading the cattle out, giving them more options for water, giving me options for water, so that we can continue to I guess you could call it decongregate the cattle and spread them out is the idea. And right now it'll fill back up, but I'll get back up here later this afternoon and let these cattle out so they can get down here and I'll fix the problem. But that's just the way ranching is. You got to stay on top of things and come out. Now, I haven't been out here for a week, but they got 3,000 gallons of water here, so they haven't been out. And there's water in the bottom of the tank, so I'm not that worried. But it is going to be, 90 today, and so I need to address this. So it's not exactly working perfectly, but the system is pumping. There's a little gauge on here that says it's over 400 watts. And this thing's only rated for 440, but the sun isn't directly on it yet. It'll get up to about 510. These old panels are 15 years old, and they're still making 510 when they're rated for 440. In case you don't know, for solar wells, it's direct current that comes off of a solar panel, and so the pump is a solar panel as well down in the water. This is a particularly deep well, not as deep as some in this country. It's about 210 feet, but it has really good water and lots of it.
Is it a DC pump then?
It's a DC pump. And I can also pump in, if I had a failure for some reason, I got a pigtail that I can change it to AC. There's a switch in the controller that automatically switches it over to AC. It knows it's AC. So they're pretty sophisticated, but they're simple at the same time, right? Power into the pump pumps the water up out. About 210. It's got about 110 feet of water in it. Yeah, to get the water. So there's a lot of water, and it makes a lot of water. I think it makes 13 gallons a minute. It's not measured on horsepower. On solar pumps, they're submersibles. So it doesn't measure it on horsepower. They come different capacities for different depths. In other words, the pump changes when your water is right at the surface and makes 13 gallons a minute as opposed to 200 feet down. Remember, you're only pumping from the top of the water level. So it just changes, but there's a whole range of solar pumps. And a lot of people are using them now, and that's good. And it's a renewable thing, because out here, there's no power. So
the point of being able to go to alternating current, you can bring a generator out here?
yeah, if I had a catastrophic failure of the panels or whatever, I could bring a generator out here and run it on AC that way. In fact, that's what we used when we test pumped it to see how much water it makes. We used a generator because we wanted to find out, well, what will this thing make? So that's how we did that. So this is another application, but the real thing that I wanted to show was that now you get to looking at your topography and going, oh, that's downhill. You can run this stuff a long ways, and we'll take, probably a 70, 80 foot drop, and we'll have plenty of water pressure at the bottom to keep the water flowing. If it'll flow down a gully, it'll flow through a pipe, and that's what we've done. So that's what we'll go to, and then we'll go back to the house. But I'll show you the other places where we have water stations set up, and that's what we'll do. I wanted to show you one water station that comes off of that system up there right here, and there's one down there in the distance across the ditch as well. That's all gravity fed. Obviously that's lower than here, but that is low enough to flow water from the top of those reservoir bubbles down to here and keep that one full. That one's got plenty of pressure, and we've got one further down yet. So I just wanted to point out those two differences, and that's the idea of getting those cattle to spread out, giving them more choice of where to come get water. It just makes it easier. Yeah.
And Mark, you are running it with that hose.
Yeah. You ran over that hose, probably saw it on the ground.
And so like most
I leave it on top of the ground, and that stuff has a lifetime warranty. It was made for golf courses, so I leave it on the ground. Then if I have a leak, I fix it.
You're not grazing in here in the winter, right?
And I don't graze in here in the winter. What I do hit sometimes is a coyote will take to that stuff in the winter sometimes and chew a hole in it. Big deal, but that's easier than having to dig it up. So over the ground, it works, and you got access to it. If a joint fails, a joint will fail sometimes. You just find out the joint. Kind of like today, I came up here and I see the bubble's empty. There's something wrong. Well, now you just start figuring out where it's wrong. And wherever the wet spot is, that's your problem. So gravity feed to here, gravity feed to there. And in such a large pasture, when we first got here, they were all either at that spring that was way down below, or they were up here. And I had to figure out ways to get more water out here to make this large pasture work. I think I've done it, and it does distribute the cows really nicely. So let's go over there across that drainage, and you say, well, that's pretty close. Well, it is, but I wasn't interested in the distance between here and there as much as I was the corner that goes all the way up there to those fence posts you can see in the distance. Nothing ever got up there until I ran that spur. So I'm interested in the places where the water isn't as much as I am where it is. You get what I'm saying? And then what?
Will your pond fill in the winter?
Yeah, it does. And in fact, it just recently went dry. As you can see, it's all the moss on the bottom. But when we first got here 15 years ago, the drought conditions were way more. And so, having this here, really, it just opens up so much more grazing and rotational stuff. They go all around on the top up there and back and forth, and it just spreads the cattle out. And that's what we're interested in, is the spread and getting that water distributed.
You say you got a line up that way, up that coulee?
Well, no, see that water containment area right there?
Oh, up, yeah.
Right there?
That fenced in, or the
Yeah.
pond?
No, the pond is one thing,
Yeah,
but the place that's fenced
fenced in,
in,
yeah.
yeah. See, what happens is the water line is running down that ditch. But up there, I put a Y in it and just brought it
Yeah.
across and made sure that it kept going downhill. Just as good a water pressure there as there is here.
Yeah, good deal.
Because it's just, all the drop. And it's just gravity. So,
Yeah. Well, you
like
can
Wes
go
said,
up
that's a
there.
real important point. Do you worry about it getting hot? No, I don't, because it's cold. And it cools off enough at night, the evaporation, and even though it runs in hot, because the pipe, remembers, over the ground, it'll come in warm, but there's enough mix there that it doesn't ever get real too hot. And you can see the buildup is not too bad in the tank either. So,
Do you have all the stations you want, or are you going to try to put more?
oh, you never have everything you want done. In fact, see that tie lane in the there's another well right over there. And I just haven't got around to bailing that to see what that's all about. But instead of $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000, I just put $1,000 in over the ground pipe and called it good. So I'm good for now. If I did that well, I'd make it pump it all the way up to the top of that rim up there, and then I could gravity feed anywhere I wanted from that high place up there. But just haven't done it. Seems to work pretty well. And yeah, solar. So there's a lot of power, especially where you have any gradient that you can use, and it'll flow water from wherever you want it to. And that's what we did with this.